2019. So in 2019, we split the product into two separate bits. So we've got product 2, which was distinct queue management, which Michael will go over later, and then product 3, which I'm been leading on, which is interactivity, and we'll explain what we mean by those things in just a while. And basically the consultation that we've launched back in July presents the work that we've undertaken in 2019 and is proposing some common processes for both application interactivity and for connection queue management. And that's what we're going to go over now. We're going to go over some of the main bits in the consultation. Obviously, if you can spend some time to look at the consultation document as well, that'll be absolutely fantastic. So if we could have the next slide. Lovely. So I'm just going to give a little overview of what's in the consultation for interactivity. So when I'm talking about interactivity, I'm talking about the sort of timescale between from when a customer has made an application for a connection through before that the offer has been accepted. So it's the sort of pre-acceptance stage. The queue management bit, which Michael's going to look at, is post-acceptance. What happens once you've accepted an offer, and how do we manage that? So, so this bit, application interactivity, is how do connection offers that are issued become interactive with each other, and so on. The responses to the consultation launched last November, which closed in January, showed that there was a preference for a common approach in the industry for an interactivity process, but there was no clear steer from that consultation on which was the favoured approach. So what we've done from about February through to July this year is we've been working on 3 main options that could potentially be the common approach to interactivity across the network. So I'm just going to outline those 3 now. You can see them there on the slide. First one is the moratorium process, which is used by most network companies at the moment. And we were looking at using a modified approach to this, where the moratorium period was not extended. The moratorium period you could talk of as a good news first approach to interactivity, whereby all offers that are issued in isolation of other offers, so that you get the lowest possible cost offer up front. So good news first, there's limited or no reinforcement often up front. Same is true of the next process, the conditional process, which we've called it, which is currently used by UKPN, UK Power Networks, which is also a good news first approach. So all the offers are issued in isolation of any other offers that are out there. So customers get the lowest cost offer first. With the UKPN process, it's called the conditional process because offers go out in strict queue order, and all offers that are issued are conditional on every offer before it's either being accepted or not accepted. And I'll explain more about the conditional process shortly. I've got a few slides to run through that. Then the last one there was the cumulative process, so-called. It's a new process that we've developed on the back of a response to the previous consultation. And it's a bad news first approach, if you like, because with the cumulative process, which I will explain shortly, every offer that's issued assumes that every other offer before it has already been accepted. So you get this cumulative approach, and so you get the worst case offer up front. So the highest case reinforcement up front, which might potentially reduce depending on the actions of previous customers. So they're the 3 that we were looking at. We spent a long time sort of developing these, comparing these options, and I've got a table in a few slides showing a comparison of the options. But essentially, we were looking at what are the impacts on customers of these 3 options, what are the impacts on network companies in running these processes, and we basically to the conditional process, the one that's currently used by UKPN, but modified such that unsuccessful customers keep their place in the queue if they reapply. This conditional process as being our preferred or minded to option. Reason being, and I'll again show you the table a bit later on, is probably likely to best suit customers as it gives a slightly longer time to accept than the moratorium process, and it's relatively easy for network companies to implement the process as well. The cumulative process, we brought that forward in the consultation as an alternative, not our preferred process, but we brought it forward as an alternative because it's very different from the other two processes, giving this sort of upfront high costs. And what we weren't sure of in the product development group was whether giving this bad news first approach, this high upfront cost to start with, was beneficial for customers or not. Hence the reason we've put this into the consultation as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk through the conditional process and what that looks like with a couple of examples, and then the cumulative process as well. And then I'll show you the comparison table that we were using, and then go from there. Michael, were there any sort of Q&As coming in at the moment?
No, there's nothing at the moment. No.
Excellent. So it's all been 100% clear so far. What I like to hear. If you've got any questions, just pop them in the Q&A. Daniel, if we could go on to the next slide. So I'm going to step through this first example for this conditional process. So what I'm showing here is the conditional process, what we are proposing to be the common interactivity process, the one that's currently used by UKPN. And what we've got here, in this first example, we've got first customer out of 3 accepting their offer and being successful, and I'll show you that as we step through. So Daniel, if we could have the next thing, thank you. So what we got here, we've got a first customer making an application, and again, Daniel, next one. And if you could just do the next, yeah, perfect. So we've got 2 customers here who've made an application, one after the other. There's some sort of offer preparation period of some duration or other. And what's happened here is, as soon as application 2 has come in, the network company has assessed the 2 applications, has believed that they're going to be interactive, and writes to both customers, to the customer for application 2 and for application 1, notifying them that they're going to be interactive. And any subsequent applications will also be notified that they're likely to be interactive. This is different from the moratorium process, where there are generally no notifications at all prior to the interactivity being triggered. Okay, if we could have the next slide. It's just a note box to say, in this example, there's only sufficient capacity for any one of the 3 applications in this particular example. And the next bit along. So we've then got leave it there. And we've then got an application by a 3rd customer. And that point, or shortly after the 3rd application comes in, the offer for customer 1 is prepared and issued. So there's a few things to say about this offer for customer number 1. At the top there, you can see above the orange bar that the offer acceptance period is 30 days. So with this conditional process, when there is interactivity triggered, all offer acceptance periods are reduced to 30 days. You can also see that in this example, in that yellow box, is showing £0 for reinforcement, not anticipating any reinforcement for this connection. And the black text underneath the offer 1 box says it's an unconditional offer. So because there's no one ahead of customer 1, offer 1 that's issued is unconditional. It can't be impacted by any other. If we go to the next one along.
Peter, sorry, there's just a little clarification that came in. Has just come in there. It's just asking, does it assume that applications 1, 2, and 3 are coming within a week or so? why isn't offer 1 made until all 3 are received?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it could be the case. Offer 1 could be made before offers 2 and 3 come in. It's just for the purpose of this example, we're assuming applications 1, 2, and 3 are fairly close together. Yes, maybe within a few days or a week or so. Okay, thanks, Michael. Great. So we've then got offer 2 being issued shortly after offer 1. Again, £0 for reinforcement, but it's classified as a conditional offer, and it's basically conditional on the outcome of offer 1. So dependent on what the customer does for offer 1 will impact on whether customer 2 can proceed or not. If we go to the next slide, Daniel. And then exactly the same for offer 3. Offer 3 is also issued, no reinforcement, but it's also conditional. Offer 3 is conditional on the outcome of offers 1 and 2. If we go to the next slide. So towards the end of that 30-day period, customer 1 chooses to accept their offer, and go to the next slide. So it's at this point now that because we can only accept one of those 3 offers in this particular example, we now can't proceed with offers 2 and 3. And at this point, we would then write to customers 2 and 3 saying that their offers have been withdrawn in this interactive process, but give them an invitation to reapply, to have a requote. If they choose to reapply, they'll keep their original place in the queue, but anyone else who may have made applications subsequently. So if you go to the next slide. So in this case, we've now got a reapplication, application 2B and 3B, if you like. If we just go to the next slide again, we're going to be now preparing their offers, and it's anticipated in that other box that's showing £1 million that there's going to be some sort of reinforcement for these 2 customers. We go to the next slide, and the next one. Oh, go back one. Sorry, something's gone wrong there. Yeah. Okay, great. So in the box on the right-hand side there is just a note to say potentially the reapplications for customers 2 and 3 could be interactive again if the standard reinforcement doesn't cover both 2 and 3, then 2 and 3 will be interactive, and customer 2 will be unconditional in that case because they're now sort of the first in the queue, and customer 3 would be conditional. Did I see a question pop up then, Michael?
No, I've just got the one there which you clarified earlier.
Maybe I think there was maybe a question that came direct to me. Okay. Maybe we'll pick those up at the end. Let's carry on through, Daniel, if we can. So on this slide, we're showing a slightly different example. And sorry, folks, if you are confused in any way, just send any questions in, and we can try and pick them up later. In this particular example, we've got exactly the same 3 applications, exactly the same 3 offers that are issued, but in this particular case, customer 1 decides not to accept their offer by the end of the 30 days. Customer 2 decides not to accept their offer as well, and then customer 3 chooses to accept their offer, and because customers 1 and 2 have effectively expired, customer 3 can accept their offer. There's now no one ahead of them to affect them, so that the original offer they've had is still valid and can proceed on that basis. So in the consultation document itself, in the appendices at the back, there are a few more case studies which show a few more examples around that. For example, about what happens if customer 2 accepts their offer before customer 1 does, or before customer 1's offer times out. In that particular scenario, if customer 2 accepts their offer first, the customer 2 will just have to wait until we know the outcome of customer 1. So potentially the customer 2 might have to wait nearly 30 days until they know the outcome, if customer 2 accepts very early on, which is a potential downside to this with a moratorium period. Whilst you don't get so long to consider your offer, you do get the turn through is a bit quicker. But we thought on balance that having that 30 days is probably beneficial for customers. Were you going to say something, Michael? No?
No.
Okay, fine. So I need to move on, I'm afraid, to the next process, which is the conditional, the cumulative process. So with this one, you can see on the screen we've got the same 3 applications that we had previously in the previous example. But in this case, offer 1 is issued in the same, so there's no reinforcement, £0 reinforcement. When offer 2 is issued, and here's where the difference comes in, offer 2 is issued on the basis that offer 1 has already been accepted. Reinforcement A is required, whatever that might be, and we've just got a nominal £1 million here, whatever that might happen to be, for offer 2. So as you can see, this is the bad news first approach. Then when offer 3 is issued, offer 3 is issued on the basis of offers 1 and 2 having already been accepted, and they get shown this nominal £10 million reinforcement in offer 3. And this is why this is a bad news first approach. It's potentially got benefits to customers, because customers can see the worst case scenario front. You might have to go through 2 or 3 rounds of interactivity through the conditional process or a moratorium process before you get to the point of knowing, oh, I'm going to be charged £10 million. Whereas in this process, you get to know up front. So the scenario on the screen is showing the most the easiest process, where all 3 customers accept their offer. So customer 1, 2, and 3 accept their offers. There's no changes required. All the offers were accepted, and all that reinforcement was needed in that particular example. If we go to the next slide, Daniel. Yeah, Michael?
Sorry, Peter, there's just a question that came in about A&D fees. In the conditional process, when customer 1 accepts, do customers 2 and 3 have to pay new A&D fees? Choose to reapply.
Okay, so yes, the reapplication and the application of A&D fees. So it's a really good question, and it's not something we have yet addressed, I'm afraid, in this process. We've been just trying to sort of address the mechanics of the process. It's quite possible that A&D fees could be applied for the reapplication. I think there's a variety of approaches now as to how that happens across the industry, and it needs to be sort of made into a bit more of a common approach. And what I'll do, we'll take that away and give it a bit of thought, because I think there's sort of pros and cons with applying the A&D fee. Maybe it should be a reduced A&D fee, and so on. But yes, I appreciate it's not the A&D fees, and we'll take it away as an issue. So just on this last one for the cumulative process, you can see here customer 1 accepts their offer, so they had the £0 reinforcement. Customer 2, on the other hand, lets their offer expire, and so what that means is the offer for customer 3 now needs to be revised. So because customer 2's gone, customer 3 now only needs, in this particular example, reinforcement A. So their reinforcement cost has dropped from the 10 million that they had in the original offer down to a revised reinforcement cost of 1 million. But because we've issued this revised offer quite close to the end of their offer acceptance period, it's likely that we would need to issue some sort of extension to their offer acceptance period. And then in this example, the customer accepts that offer. So there's a couple of other scenarios with that in consultation document appendices. if we just go on to the next slide, because Michael needs to get on shortly into queue management bits. This was the comparison table we've used. And as you can see from this, the moratorium process, the conditional process are both quite similar. The conditional process just was just marginally better on one or two things than the moratorium process, which is why we've proposed the conditional process as the preferred approach. The industry, in terms of the cumulative offers process, there's quite a big difference between that one and the other two. The top one there, speed of receiving clarity on offer, could be viewed as either high or low depending on your perspective. If it's good for customers to know the total highest cost up front, then you might say high clarity. If customers think they might be put off by receiving a high cost up front, then say it's a bit of it scores low on that one. The other thing about the cumulative offer process is that it's quite it's going to be quite a lot of work for network companies because there'll be quite a lot of rework of offers, reissuing of offers, and so on and so forth, with a potential question mark over how will that affect A&D fees if network companies are having to do a lot more rework of offers and so on and so forth. I'll let you have a look at that slide, perhaps a bit more at your leisure. If we just go on to the next slide, Daniel, the last one from me. So the consultation question for interactivity bit is, do you agree with the conditional interactivity solution being proposed? And if not, what reasons do you have for preferring a different solution? So that was mostly me. Michael, were there any other questions that had come in that might be worth answering now?
Just a couple have just come in just at the very last second there. One, the customers have visibility of the number of applicants in the queue.
The customers will generally know how many applicants are ahead of them in the queue, because a customer will be given a queue position, generally speaking. So customers will know that they are queue position, 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever. They won't necessarily, customers generally speaking at the moment don't necessarily know how many are behind them in the queue. And with the conditional process, that's not actually a problem because the customer has got those 30 days to decide what to do, and any customers behind them in the queue don't actually affect them. It's only customers ahead of them in the queue that have an impact on them. Did I see one more question there?
Yeah, there's a question for clarification on the conditional process. Would applicants 2 and 3 be notified in the event that applicant 1 does not accept, i.e. would applicant 2's offer become unconditional, or would they still be accepting in uncertainty?
Okay, so in the conditional process, would applicants 2 and 3 be notified? Okay. Not sure, to be honest. It's a good question. I don't see that there's any reason why they couldn't be notified. But again, not quite got into the absolute detail on that question, and we can take that away for some further thought and development. I don't see any reason why they couldn't be notified. Okay. Thanks very much, everyone. I'll hand over to Michael now, and if there's any questions that we haven't picked up, answered immediately now, don't worry, we'll pick them up by email afterwards. So yeah, Michael, to you.
That's great, thank you. So if you could just bear with me while I get the hang of this technology. So hopefully you can all see the screen. Peter, have you got that?
Yes, can see that.
Okay, great. Okay, so unlike interactivity, which we've just discussed.
So sorry, Michael, what slide are you showing at the moment?
So I'm just holding on that interactivity
Oh, right.
last question. Yeah.
Okay, fine, yeah.
So interactivity is about allocating capacity to customers at the offer stage. However, connection management is about management of customers and available capacity beyond the date that they accept connection offer. What I want to cover in the next sort of 20 minutes or so, hopefully leaving a bit of additional time for some questions, is just to cover off some of the key concepts in the consultation to give you a better sense of what the policy is designed to achieve and what it might mean for you as customers. I think, as we stated at the start, the consultation is open to the 25th of September, and getting your feedback is a really important part of this process for us. We've developed this preferred approach as network companies, and of course, we don't develop projects, so we need to know that it works for our customers too. We need to understand if we're right, and if we're wide of the mark, then please do let us know. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're looking at the issue of connection queue management in the first place, and then I'll focus on our preferred approach to two kind of key elements of the policy, the milestones that we've adopted and what we've called the tolerance policy. I'm then going to run through some examples of how the policy would work in practice and how it will apply to storage and flexibility assets, which is very much in line with Ofgem's expectations as they've set out in their smart system and flexibility plan. So the connection queue is of course not a new issue, it's a long-standing issue for the industry, pun intended, and there are of course a couple of reasons why we need to look at this policy. Under the current arrangements, contracted projects are placed into order on a first contract, first connect basis. In this example, projects A to D are placed into the queue as a result of the application process. This means that the capacity is allocated to them based on the date that they accept their connection offer. These projects are therefore allocated in the position in the queue as soon as they accept their connection offer. If any of the projects A to D were interactive, then they would be placed in the queue based on the outcome of the interactivity process that we have outlined previously. Now, of course, at this stage, the queue position doesn't really mean much for the customers. They may not even be aware that there is an order to their connection, their connection contract that they've accepted. However, projects that sit ahead of any reinforcement can create issues where they choose to delay their connection date if they aren't progressing as planned. This can lead to delays and extra costs for subsequent customers if the capacity is deemed to be being held for projects that are later, projects that is earlier in the queue. Our policy aims to provide a balanced approach on the impacts for two projects, allowing connections to be made more quickly. Overall, challenges to the first to contract, first to connect policy more commonly occur with projects that sit behind the requirement for a reinforcement. Here we have projects E to H and would all perhaps like to connect earlier but are unable to do so. If in this example either project A or C did not progress, then project E could potentially progress earlier without the need for reinforcement. However, under the current rules, this could only happen if either project A or C sold or were terminated by the network company. Without this, project E is delayed until the reinforcement works are complete, and the network company may have completed some reinforcement that is not required, which is inefficient overall. There may be legitimate reasons for customers moving connection dates. However, under the existing arrangements, there is no real mechanism for network companies to intervene where customers continually delay. Queue management policy is designed to address these issues. Having a clear set of milestones that can be used as a way of measuring projects' progress towards their contracted connection dates is a very important first step in managing the connection queue issue. Now, as Peter touched on earlier on, we did go to consultation at the end of 2018, and we set out a range of options, a range of ways of addressing queue management back then, and we got some very clear feedback at that stage that milestones are a good thing, but that a lot of work has already went into developing milestones which have broadly been adopted by the DNOs, and that was undertaken by the ENA's DER Connection Steering Group. The feedback was generally, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And we've taken that feedback on board and are proposing to adopt the DER Connection Steering Group milestones for this policy, with a couple of small changes highlighted in yellow. The first of these is relatively superficial. We're looking to change the name of Milestone 6. This milestone was previously called Commence and Progress Works, and we're changing it to Construction Plan Submission. The requirement for this milestone is for the customer to provide the network company with a plan to demonstrate that it will meet its contracted connection date. And so the name Commence and Progress Works can be a little bit misleading. The second change is more material in that we're introducing a single new milestone called Project Commitment. This is in recognition that the existing milestones were developed with distribution customers in mind, and overall it was felt that we needed to have something which reflects the longer development process that projects at the transmission level can require, and ensuring there's a fairly regular pace of milestones along the project development path, i.e. we don't want to have a long period between securing planning permission and actually putting a spade in the ground with no milestones to measure projects in that intervening period. And we know a lot can happen in the process. Looking at this new milestone in a bit more detail, focusing on the evidence requirements first. In order for customers to demonstrate that they've met this new milestone of project commitment, there's a range of options available. For distribution customers, it should be business as usual, with proof of stage payments making you eligible to meet this milestone. At transmission, there are 3 options available. Customers can provide one of the following: a binding contract for main plant equipment, a board paper evidencing FID, or evidence of subsidy award. Now, the timescale for achieving this new milestone depends on 2 things. First of all, it requires the date that you provide your construction plan to the network company, and secondly, it uses the date you state in that plan for beginning construction of the project. Looking at in context against the timescales for other milestones, it's probably quite helpful. If you are familiar with the DER Connection Steering Group milestones, you're probably aware that there are some changes depending on whether or not your project requires an EIA or not. In the example that I'm just going to run through, I focused on non-EIA project with shorter timescales, but I do have an example at the end as well which sets out the differences if an EIA was required, just to set out what that means. So looking at the timescales, starting from offer acceptance, customers will have 2 months to initiate planning permission and secure land rights. From there, or from offer acceptance, they also have 12 months to demonstrate that they have secured planning permission. Once planning permission is secured, there's then 6 months to provide the network company with your construction plan. In that construction plan, you'll provide us with a date for beginning the project construction. In this example, project construction begins 24 months after providing the construction plan. And that 24 months is used to set the date for your project commitment. It's set halfway between the 2, in this instance 12 months. So if there were 36 months between the 2, it would of course be set at 18 months. And we've also recognised that for particularly shorter time turnaround projects, this milestone may not be required. So we've said in this policy that the time between providing your construction plan submission and beginning project construction is less than 12 months. In this example, if we've got 6 months, then the requirement for that project commitment milestone may fall away, and that will be agreed with your network company. So that pretty much covers the milestones element of the policy. Just to clarify before I do move on, if an EIA is required, this is already within the existing milestones set by the ENA. There is some slight changes if an EIA is required for your project. Largely, the requirement to initiate planning permission is split into 2 stages. So within 2 months, you're required to demonstrate that you've secured land rights under the evidence requirements set by this policy. And in terms of initiating planning permission, you have to demonstrate that you have engaged the consultants required to undertake the studies for your planning submission. There's then a period of 14 months from offered acceptance to have submitted your planning permission request, and then you have 24 months from offer acceptance to demonstrate that you've secured planning permission. That's the main change for customers that require an EIA for their project, and there was quite an extensive engagement with customers to get that right previously. From there, it's generally business as usual, with the same kind of time frames being set for the following milestones. So is there a question come in there, Peter?
Yeah, so there was a couple of things, Michael. One question, which you sort of may well have answered already, says, does this mean that the DNOs feel that the milestones guidance produced by the ENA doesn't work? I think you sort of expanded on that a little bit, just to sort of, we're not chucking away the ENA milestones, are we? We're just sort of effectively adding to them and slightly clarifying them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the feedback that we got from our previous consultation was very, very strong, and that a lot of work and engagement has gone into developing these milestones, and they're understood. But milestones are, they're a fairly blunt form of queue management, and the work we've done here is to try and basically provide a more robust policy that enables, gives the network companies confidence to engage and to be able to move customers in the connection queue and kind of enhance the milestones as they are.
Yep. There's one other question. Is this proposing to change the connection and queue management process for transmission connections?
Yes, that's a very important point. This is the milestones have been developed for DNOs, but this policy is intended for transmission and distribution customers that will work across networks, which is why we've introduced this new milestone of project commitment, because clearly we can have much longer timescales for transmission projects, but at the same time we want to try and strike that right balance and get something that works for everyone.
Okay, that was it for now.
Okay, great. So overall, there's 8 milestones in total, largely based on the ENA DER milestones, with 1 new milestone. The next part of the policy focuses on this new tolerance element. And the purpose of a tolerance is to recognise that there can be issues that arise through the project development process that are with a customer's control. And so holding each customer to a cliff edge on each milestone doesn't feel particularly fair or perhaps proportionate. But simply, a tolerance is really an allowance of time that is given to each customer that they can keep in their back pocket and use if they miss a milestone. Once that allowance of time is used up, then the network company can begin to take action. However, there are different challenges that arise for different types of projects, and what is right for one isn't necessarily right for all. So we've categorised the tolerance as follows. On the left-hand corner there, you'll see there's 3 categories of tolerance: work in progress, at risk, and termination. Along the top row, you've got the level of connection from LV and HV customers through to 275, 400 kV, and 122 offshore. Now, looking at the right-hand column for customers connected at 275 and up, what this policy means is that they are allowed to delay on any combination of milestones for up to 12 months, and they will be classified as work in progress. That is to say that no action would be taken at that stage. This is the time that they have in their back pocket, and that level of time reduces as you move down the levels. So going to 6 months at EHV and 132 kV, 3 months at LV and HV. If a customer was to exceed this first level, so again, going back to that right-hand column, if it was to extend beyond 12 months, it would then be classified as being at risk. And that means it's at risk of queue management. The network company is then able to take action and intervene and move that customer in the connection queue. Importantly, that delay still holds against the customer even though it has been queue managed. And if the customer continues to delay beyond that allowance of at risk, so again on the right-hand column, if it was to delay beyond a further 12 months, exceeding more than 24 months, it would then be classified as under termination, and the network company may choose to terminate that particular contract. And again, those timescales reduce as you move down the connection levels. There's a fair bit of detail in that box, and I've just got a couple of examples just to run through that and put in a little bit of context. So,
Michael, guys, there was one question. You might be coming to answer this one. If you're 3 months late on every milestone, can you run out of tolerance? But is that something you're just about to come on to?
Yes, yeah. That's exactly the way it works. There's a cumulative allowance of time, so hopefully this will clarify that. If you look at this, again, assuming that this is a non-EIA project that's accepted its connection offer, and 2 months after that, it has met its first 2 milestones. It's able to demonstrate its initiated planning and has secured land rights. However, when it comes time to secure planning, it hits a delay, and we're saying here the delay is 5 months. Now here, we see that if that was an LV or HV project, it would have exceeded its tolerance and be classified as being at risk of queue management. The network company could adjust its place in the queue, but for the others, it's still classified as a work in progress and allowed to continue. Cumulative delay is then 5 months in total, and if it moves on to the next milestone and it suffers from a further delay, that would then be added to the total cumulative delay, so it would have 8 months of delay against the project. And at that stage, it means that if it were an LV or HV customer, it could be subject to termination. EHV and 132, it would now be classified as being at risk, but for the higher levels, 375 and 400, they have 12 months to use up, so it's still classified as being work in progress, and they've got a little bit more time to continue and develop the project.
There was another sort of related question, which you may well have answered already. If the delay is caused by lack of planning approval or lack of movement by a TO, how will this impact projects that are in limbo for no fault of their own? So, i.e., is there any dispensation on these milestones or on this tolerance, or is it for any reason whatsoever, basically?
It's a very good question, and it's one that we've put into the consultation. We've created this tolerance policy to give customers some flexibility to deal with issues that come up in the development timescale. It could be that it applies to issues that come up in planning, like appeals and things that are out with your control. But we have put a question in there to get your feedback, and if there are any particular issues or instances where these delays shouldn't be counted for. We really want to hear that from customers, so it would be good to get your views on that in the consultation responses.
And there was just one other thing that came in saying transmission was beyond the scope of the original consultation. How are you addressing this increase in scope? Well, I just had a quick look at the PID, the project initiation document for 2019, and transmission and distribution were both in scope for this queue management piece. So hopefully that's addressed the question that they were both in scope from the beginning of the year. Yeah.
It's always been intended for this to be a kind of BE transmission distribution policy to develop. Is that everything, Peter? Is there any others?
For now.
Okay, great. I'll just jump on, kind of conscious of time as well. One other point to make really is just that delays will accrue for each milestone. So in this next example, where you've got 2 milestones which are due on the same date, if you were to delay on both of those for, say, 5 months each, then although 5 months have passed in time, you would have accrued 10 months in total of cumulative delay. So again, that little box there just shows you the potential impact that would have on your project. I'm just going to jump on to the next bit, which is really about what happens if your project is classified as being at risk and potentially being queue managed. So in this example, you've got projects A to D, which accept their connection offer in order 1 to 4. Projects E to H would like to connect in 2022, but due for the need for reinforcement are unable to connect until 2024. And these have accepted their offers in the order 5 to 8. Project A, if it has a cumulative delay of 13 months, it is now classified as being at risk. And so queue management is triggered. So what happens is the network company will look down the queue of projects that may want to connect earlier. For projects B, C, and D, there's no real benefit, and they will retain their relative positions. However, project E, which sits behind the reinforcement, would be offered the ability to connect earlier with revised costs and securities. And project E accepts this offer to connect earlier. So the queue is then reordered as follows. Project A will move to the bottom of the reinforcement queue. This is in recognition of the fact that the other projects in the queue, namely projects F, G, and H, have all remained on track, and if additional capacity were to free up ahead of the reinforcement, then they would be given the first opportunity to accept that earlier connection in future. Project A will also be given a nominal acceptance date after Project H to cater for situations where there are further acceptances to join later. And the project also picks up the additional costs and securities associated with the connection moving down the queue. The cumulative delay also remains with the project, and the milestones will be updated to reflect its new connection date. So projects B to D will move up the queue and retain their relative positions. Project E will move to the bottom of the queue that sits ahead of the reinforcement with lower costs and securities. It's able to connect earlier without the need for reinforcement. Project A moves to the space created by Project H and is subject to reinforcement. While the relevant milestones will be updated to reflect the new connection date, the cumulative delay will led to this project being classified as at risk will be carried over. So if Project A continues to delay for more than another 11 months, it could be subject to termination. So just looking at a slightly different example, again, if Project A has been classified as being at risk, and Project E would like to connect earlier, we have a slightly different scenario here where Project A has a capacity of 30 megawatts, but Project E is has a 50 megawatt project. Now, what we've said in this policy for this instance is that if the capacity available is less than the size of your project, then you can accept it, but you would have to reduce the size of your project to fit with that capacity. In this instance, Project E would rather connect its original size project, 50 megawatts, at a later date, and so it turns down the ability to connect earlier with revised costs and securities. So the network company then continues to look down the connection queue, and looking at Project F, conveniently is able to use up that available capacity, and it accepts that offer. So the queue here is reordered with Project F moving to the bottom of the no reinforcement queue and Project A moving to the bottom of the reinforcement queue, both being moved with revised costs and securities. The opposite of that example is true as well. So if more capacity frees up than is available by any single project below in the queue, then the capacity is continued to be offered until it is fully utilised. So in this example 3, we're able to move 3 projects up to connect earlier with revised costs and securities, with 1 project moving down to the bottom of that reinforcement queue. Finally, I just want to pick up on the position that we've arrived at in terms of how storage or flexibility providers would be treated in the Connect queue. This is very much in line with Ofgem's expectations in terms of what they set out for the ENA under the Smart System and Flexibility Plan, and we set out how the mechanism of queue management would work for these flexibility providers. But just to be to kind of underline, what we have not said anything on is how market mechanisms required to drive that behaviour would work. These are very much out of the scope of this product. So what we have here is, again, the same scenario. Projects A to D have accepted their offers in the order 1 to 4, and projects E to G would like to connect in 2022, but a reinforcement is required. In this instance, Project F is a flexibility provider, and so it is given the option to connect earlier if it agrees to relieve that need for reinforcement, which was there previously. That then allows the network company to offer out the available capacity to the customers in the queue behind it, and the normal queue management rules will be applied. So again, the network company will look down the connection queue, this time at Project E, we're saying 30 megawatts is made available. Again, Project E is greater than 30 megawatts, and again, it chooses to reject that offer to connect earlier, preferring to connect its larger project at a later date. But Project G would like to connect earlier and is able to do so. So the queue would be reordered with one project staying behind the reinforcement and the others moving as kind of out there. So I appreciate that's probably a bit of a quick run through some of the detail in the consultation. We've got 6 questions in the consultation overall. 5 of them are focused on the queue management element. As I said at the start, really want to get your input as customers. We've developed this preferred approach as network companies, and of course, if we're going to get it to work, it needs to work for all. So your input is really important on that. The questions focus on the issue of milestones and the tolerance period as well, but generally, keen to get views on any aspect of it. It's open until 25th of September. The link's available here, and I'm sure we'll maybe have a few minutes for questions, but if there's anything that comes up which we haven't been able to cover, then please do get in touch.
Yeah, there was just a couple of things, Michael. One question was, for an offshore project, what does planning permission mean? Don't know if you've got an answer to that, but obviously a bit of a specific one. Is that maybe something you need to take away, or have you got a view on that now?
It's a good question. I think we included it in the consultation, but let me take that away because I don't want to try and remember and get it wrong. So let me take that away and come back to clarify.
Okay. Great. And there was one more question. How do these proposals for queue management interact with the existing connect and manage process? I know certainly exists on the transmission system.
That's an interesting question. I don't see. I think connect and manage just would continue as usual. I'm not sure that there's much more to it than that, but it's maybe one we can take offline.
Yeah, maybe we'll give it a little bit more thought and come back to that one. That's currently it on the questions. It's probably worth wrapping up now, isn't it? So yeah, anything else to add, Daniel?
No, just that we will post all of the Q&A anonymized online. So if there is a question that we didn't get to, we'll address it online.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much from myself.